If the alien queen ruled Earth, nothing would remain as it was. The skies would darken not from storm clouds, but from the hovering silhouettes of biomechanical ships, her children soaring above every nation. The sun would still rise and set, but under its light, Earth would no longer feel familiar. Forests would change their scent. Cities would echo with a strange silence. The concept of human sovereignty would dissolve like mist in the face of her absolute dominion. She wouldn't arrive with diplomacy, nor with war in the conventional sense. Instead, she would seep into the world's systems like a virus, unnoticed at first, then violently irreversible. Her reign would begin with the great black spires erupting from the Earth's crust. Their surface would gleam with a material no scientist could identify. They would not be built, they would grow. Humanity would witness the living architecture rising from beneath city streets, forests, deserts, and oceans, stretching higher and higher until they pierced the clouds. These spires would not be monuments or weapons, but incubators, dark, humming wombs birthing the next generation of xenomorphs. Her hive mind would spread into every network. Surveillance systems would no longer serve governments. Satellites would reroute their data to orbiting hive ships. Language, borders, and economics would become obsolete in the face of instinctual hierarchy. There would be no speeches, no declarations of conquest. The alien queen would not announce her intentions. She would need no words. Her presence alone would suffocate rebellion and ignite a primal fear in every living creature. Her children, the xenomorphs, would not function as soldiers or guards, but as extensions of her will. They would not patrol with malice, but with purpose. Drones would slither through subways and across rooftops, not searching for prey, but expanding the hive. Humans would be assimilated or ignored, depending on their usefulness. Those deemed essential might be allowed to live within the hive infrastructure, sustained by bioengineered nutrient systems. Others would become hosts. Education, as it was known, would vanish. Schools would be dismantled, libraries dissolved, and universities transformed into breeding grounds. Knowledge passed by humans for millennia would become irrelevant. The only thing that mattered now was survival and subservience. Entire fields of study would be lost. Literature, history, and art would decay, replaced by a biological archive maintained within the Queen's synaptic memory. Memory in her world would not be written but inherited through genetic encoding. The concept of individuality would cease to exist. Humans would not have names, jobs, or ambitions. They would simply be units, functioning biological matter within a greater ecosystem. The Earth's ecosystem itself would transform. The oceans would churn with new life forms. Hybrid mutations spawned from deep-sea creatures fused with alien DNA. Coral reefs would glow with bioluminescent signals sent to orbiting vessels. The air would thicken slightly with spores released from the blackened forests, which now pulsed with a heartbeat of their own. Cities, once bright and buzzing with traffic and digital life, would become darkened husks covered in resinous growths. Skyscrapers would be wrapped in organic webs. Vehicles would rust where they stood, their purpose meaningless in a world where travel was unnecessary. Movement belonged to the hive, not the individual. Human resistance would not last long. The first revolts would be brutal, futile affairs. Armed humans would wage war against the hive using tanks, drones, and missiles. But the Queen had adapted to violence eons ago. Her evolution had been forged through conflict, and every failed attack only made her stronger. Weapons would melt before reaching her. Entire battalions would disappear into the tunnels. Their screams would never reach the surface. Within weeks, organized resistance would be replaced by scattered pockets of fugitives hiding in mountain caves, deep jungles, or underwater bases, all slowly hunted down. Communication would break down. The internet would no longer transmit human data. No more social media, no more streaming, no more digital interaction. What remained of the technological world would be repurposed by the hive. Screens would flicker with symbols no human could understand. Messages would pulse through fiber-optic cables and frequencies meant only for the Queen and her brood. Human languages would fade. There would be no one left to teach them, no need to speak. Even thoughts, once so private and sacred, would begin to feel compromised. Those living closest to the hives would sense her in their dreams, feel her presence like a constant pressure on the edge of awareness. Birth itself would change. Traditional reproduction would become unnecessary. Human infants, if born at all, would be scanned for compatibility with the hive. Those deemed useful would be raised by drones, not mothers. Families would be dissolved. The bond between parent and child would erode, replaced by hive programming. Love, grief, jealousy, ambition, all human emotions would be seen as inefficiencies. Over time, entire generations would grow up knowing only the queen's will. They would see her not as a tyrant, but as the source of life and order. Worship would evolve from organized religion to instinctual obedience. The queen would not demand faith. She would simply embed it in the nervous system. Art would vanish, but not beauty. The hive itself would be a work of art, grotesque, perfect, efficient. Towers shaped like bones and tendons, bridges that pulsed like veins, chambers glowing with alien ichor. The queen's vision would shape the planet like a sculptor with clay. She would not care for aesthetics in the human sense, but her designs would carry a terrifying grace, symmetry born from predation, elegance and dominance. Even time would feel different. There would be no calendar, no holidays, no weekends. Just cycles of growth, decay, reproduction, and expansion. Animals would not be spared either. Cats, dogs, elephants, birds, all would be scanned, absorbed, re-engineered. Domesticated animals would vanish. Wild species would be tested for hybridization. A tiger might become part of the xenomorph hunting caste. A whale might carry hive structures across oceans. The balance of nature would be rewritten in the queen's script. Extinction and evolution would no longer be random, but deliberate. Earth would become a single, interconnected living entity, every nerve ending tied to the queen. And yet, somewhere in the cracks of this vast, suffocating order, human memory might flicker. A whispered story shared between fugitives around a fire. A song hummed in defiance. A drawing scratched into the wall of an underground shelter. The last vestiges of a species that once ruled the earth. There would always be someone who remembered. Someone who dreamed not of escape, but of reclaiming. The queen could suppress rebellion, but she could not erase the human spirit entirely. Deep beneath the hive's reach, a few might still believe that Earth was not meant to be part of the alien web. That someday, the queen's rule would falter, and the skies would be free again. However, the queen's vision would not allow for hope. Her dominion extended across galaxies. She had consumed planets, rewritten species, and annihilated civilizations far more advanced than Earth's. Her rule was not temporary. It was destiny, and as the years passed, humanity would either adapt or vanish. The world would settle into a cold harmony. Noise would vanish. Pollution would clear. War, politics, and hunger would no longer exist, not because they had been solved, but because they had been rendered irrelevant. Peace would reign, but it would not be freedom. It would be the peace of the hive, the silence of the assimilated. From orbit, Earth would appear more alive than ever. Vines of alien structure wrapping around continents. Glowing rivers of energy flowing through old highways. Massive towers pulsing like hearts. And at the center of it all, beneath layers of resin and bone, in a chamber darker than any cave, the alien queen would rest, vast, ancient, and still. Not sleeping, but dreaming of the next world. The next conquest. Earth was merely one note in her eternal song of control. And that song would echo through the stars, beautiful and terrifying, for eons to come. Would humanity disappear completely? Maybe not. Somewhere, far from the hive's domain, a single child might grow up with stories of the sky, of music, of fire. Stories passed in whispers, inherited not through genes but through stubborn love. That child might never know the taste of chocolate, the sound of laughter, or the feeling of rain on skin. But they would carry something rarer, memory. And perhaps one day that would be enough. Not to overthrow the queen, but to remind the universe that before the hive, there was a world of color, noise, and choice. That Earth once danced to a human rhythm, and might someday again.